We can speak now to Jacob Rees-Mogg. He is the Minister for Brexit Opportunities and Government Efficiency. And I might put that question to you first, Mr Rees-Mogg. Was this a snub from number 10, not having the Lionesses grace the premises, or is it just scheduling problems?
It's definitely not a snub. I mean, look, I know absolutely nothing about football, but I must confess I'm always delighted when England win. And I was very amused to hear you saying that they were very much better behaved. I do seem to remember when we won the Ashes in 2005 for the first time since the late 1980s, the behaviour in Downing Street left something to be desired, and I'm sure the Lionesses wouldn't have done that.
We'll reflect, of course, on Exeter last night and the surprise, if it was, Penny Mordaunt coming out in terms of, I think, your chosen candidate, Liz Truss. Maybe a lot of people scratching their heads thinking, hold on, we heard about blue-on-blue attacks and the Mordaunt camp saying there's been dirty tricks, and suddenly they're best of friends again.
Well, I think that tells you something about the Conservative Party. We are ultimately all on the same side. We want to win elections and we want to keep the socialists out because we think they'd be ruinous for the country. And whoever wins in the end will have loyal support from Conservative members up and down the country. And Penny has showed that, and shown that, to my mind, with considerable grace.
A poll that has been conducted by your campaign, we're told privately, which puts Rishi Sunak just 5 points behind Liz Truss, which may surprise many, given not only the number of big beasts now endorsing her campaign, but also just the word that we're getting loud and clear, certainly from the membership, about who is their favourite. Is this just a case of trying to perhaps leak a poll that might prompt people to vote to make sure that there's no complacency here?
I'm sure not. There are quite strict rules that pollsters adhere to. There's a code of conduct for pollsters to stop people leaking polls that they think may have a particular desired effect, and it requires information to be published and so on, and the details of the poll have been published. And I believe it wasn't actually commissioned by Liz Truss, but her campaign was aware of it. But it is a reminder that elections aren't won until people have cast their votes and the votes are counted. And it's really important that every supporter of Liz Truss votes in this election.
Ahead to the fact it's not just the party leadership campaign, it will also be a new Prime Minister. This was Exeter last night, just down the road from Tiverton and Honiton, who, of course, returned a Liberal Democrat MP. Many people may be asking, why would you want someone who is a former Liberal Democrat now leading your party?
Well, I think it shows great wisdom to be able to change your mind, that if you discover that your opinion is wrong, what do? Do you bash on with the wrong opinion for years and years, or do you say, I have seen the error of my ways and I've seen the truth of conservatism? And Liz Truss has realised that conservatism is better for the country. I think that's admirable. And it has to be said, I grew up in a pretty Tory household and I ended up being a Tory. Whether I would have been a Lib Dem if I'd grown up in a Lib Dem household must be a moot point.
Challenge in the southwest, haven't you, from that party?
The Conservative Party is always challenged by different parties. You can never take electoral success for granted, and we have to govern well. The key to being re-elected is that we get the right economic policy. And this is where I think Liz is so strong, that she has policies that will both deal with the cost of living and take the burden off people by keeping taxes down, rather than promising tax cuts in the long-term future.
I want to talk about this war that's being declared on Whitehall waste. I suppose from a Foreign Secretary point of view, perhaps unfortunate turn of phrase that's been used by some of those briefing for her. But wanting to save billions in this area, lower salaries, it's suggested, for civil servants outside the capital. Angela Rayner saying this is hardly levelling up, is it?
Well, you wouldn't expect Angela Rayner to support a Conservative policy. It'd be quite a revelation.
But it's not levelling up.
If she ever did. But yes, it is. There's already a London allowance, so people working in London get paid more. This is simply formalising this, and it's for new employees. It's not for people currently civil servants. It's to say the government will pay the market rate. And surely that's right, because you don't want the government to crowd out local businesses, and you don't want the government to spend more taxpayers' money than is necessary. But anybody currently employed as a civil servant will remain on their current pay rate.
A return, if we may, to the central issue between the two, the economy and how we look at things going forward. I thought it was quite interesting that Liz Truss, again in the hustings in Exeter, pointed out that we have lower debt ratios than Canada and Japan, and actually heralding that fact. But that's down to Rishi Sunak, isn't it?
Well, actually, if you take account of quantitative easing, which is £875 billion of money that the government owes to itself, we have a debt-to-GDP ratio of below 60%. And if you want to credit to anybody, the person this should be credited to is George Osborne. The work George Osborne did between 2010 and 2016 meant that we were able to afford the pandemic. So the money we spent, the £408 billion on the pandemic, would not have been affordable without the way George Osborne handled the economy. And I think he hasn't got enough credit for his very important work.
So does that mean we're back to austerity with the new Prime Minister?
No, it doesn't, but you should always ensure that taxpayers' money is spent well. But the programme of austerity that George Osborne followed left the public finances in a state where we could afford a crisis. And so that was a very successful policy and has led to our current economic strength. Economic policies have quite a long period before they come to fruition, and I think we need to apportion the credit correctly.
And finally, Mr. Rees-Mogg, you're one of the few that we saw publicly anyway going to the wedding party, Boris Johnson, at the weekend. I wondered if you might tell us a little bit about it, something that we don't already know. And I wonder if perhaps Nadine Dorries, who also attended, had any comments about your double-breasted suits, perhaps.
Well, I can tell you one thing about this double-breasted suit is it's 20 years old. So that the great thing about traditional English tailoring is that it lasts.
OK,
but I'm afraid I'm afraid I'm going to duck that question. It was a private party. It was a very happy occasion, but the leaking culture is bad enough within government, but for private events, I think goes a bit beyond the pale. So forgive me, but I won't gossip.